Marcus and I play the shakuhachi, but I also play this instrument here, which is a Shinobue, which I play for my taiko group. And a few weeks ago, I started making some videos on the Shinobue as well, because there is actually not a lot of information available in the West on this instrument. So in the first videos, I talked a bit about some general aspects of the instrument and what a good instrument for a beginner would be, what options you have for a first instrument. And today I'm going to talk a bit about the basic technique. So let's get right into it. The Shinobue is a traverse flute, so you hold it horizontally like this. You have the blowing hole here, the utaguchi, the blowing edge here, and then you have the finger holes here. There are basically four main points of contact where you hold the flute. So this is just holding the flute without playing anything. And these points are that you support the flute from basically below with your two thumbs. You have your pinky of your right hand on the last hole here. So this is covering the last hole. And then you have a contact point here with your lower lip. Okay. And basically, so this left thumb is not just from below, it's a bit more from the front, so that you can use your left thumb to press the instrument very gently against your lower lip. Okay, so point 1, point 2, point 3, and point 4. This is how you hold the flute. And the idea is that you use enough muscle power that the instrument doesn't fall down, that it doesn't move very much, in particular when you start moving the fingers, so that it stays in a stable position. But you don't use any force, so you don't really press it very hard against your lip. So this here, that's a very common issue for beginners, that they use a lot of pressure to press the flute against the lower lip so that it doesn't fall down, that it doesn't move. But over time, you'll develop more technique and you will find ways in which you can really just hold the instrument without much force. And this is what you're aiming for. Okay, so that's the basic way in which you hold the flute with these 4 points. The next point that I should mention is that when you close all the holes on the flute, like this, you don't use the pinky of your left hand. Okay, this finger never closes a hole. And the thumbs, as I already explained, only serve to hold the flute, so they don't close any holes either. The pinky of the right hand closes this hole here, okay? And then these top 3 holes are closed with the fingers of your left hand, and the remaining 4 holes are closed with the fingers of your right hand, okay? So these 3 fingers here, these 4 fingers here. One thing that is not immediately obvious when you see people playing is that the standard way in which you close these holes is that for the left hand, you use the end bit, the end joint of your fingers, so this bit here. But for the right hand, you actually use the second joint, so this here for these 3 fingers. But for the pinky, you use the end joint as well. Okay, so for the left hand, this means you close the holes like this with the end joint. But for the right hand, you actually use the second joint here, and the pinky uses the end joint. Okay, so this means if I hold it up straight like this, I can hold it horizontally as well. So this means, okay, end joints here, middle joints here, end joint for this finger. Okay. Shinobue is not quite as standardized as shakuhachi, for example, so there are differences on how people hold the flute and which joints they exactly use. So you will see people do different things, and feel free by all means to experiment yourself. But at the end of the day, the important thing is that you can close the holes properly and that you can make a good sound and that you can play the instrument. This is just the standard way in which most beginners are instructed, and this is also the way in which I personally play the flute. So if I hold the flute like this, then my fingers are like this, okay? This pinky sometimes has a tendency to get in the way, so you'll need to find a way to maybe hold it up a bit so that it doesn't conflict with the index finger of your right hand, so these get in the way sometimes. Okay, so this is the way the fingers are placed. Then the thumb of your left hand is roughly here where your index finger is. That's a good first point. And the thumb of your right hand is roughly where your middle finger is. Okay, so you'll just need to find the best way in which you can hold the flute with your right hand and the thumb on your left hand, and so that your fingers all fit nicely onto the flute. This just takes some experimentation. And as always, as I say in these videos very frequently, if you have access to somebody who already plays this instrument, go ask them. It's always good to get some feedback. If you don't have anybody, or if you cannot find a teacher, look into a mirror. This also is very revealing. This really helps to see where things may go wrong for you. Okay. So that's the finger placement. This is the neutral position for the flute. The final bit on position, of course, there can be said much more about position and breathing and all that kind of stuff. But the main point that I wanted to mention here is that your elbows are not drooped, and they're also not held out like this. But to really hold the flute steady, it really is a good idea to have the elbows raised a bit. So if I just relax everything, then my elbows are here. So I raise my elbows a bit to play Shinobue. Okay, so much for the basic position of the fingers and how to hold the flute, as all these things takes a while to figure out and to get comfortable with, but this is the basic position. Okay, so the next big problem, the next big point, how to make a sound. And for that, a standard technique or a standard trick or preparatory exercise, if you like, is to just hold out your hand and blow so that you can feel the airstream in your hand. So this means that you point the airstream quite horizontally, so you don't really point down, something like that, because then the airstream goes down here. You can't feel anything in your hand. And it also means that you use quite a focused airstream. So not nothing like that. The exact techniques on how to form this embouchure, it's a very big topic, and I'm not really going to go into too much detail here. The basic thing that you should know is that the embouchure is not very big when you play Shinobue, but your lips should be very relaxed. So try to not do this with a lot of tension in your lips. Try to keep your lips relaxed. And just let escape air through the middle part, but the rest of the lips should really be quite relaxed. And in particular, what I always place a lot of emphasis on is to blow into your lower lip so that your lower lip stays relaxed. So it's more like that. Again, this is a very big topic, and I'm sure if you have interest in these videos, and tell me so in the comments, and subscribe to my channel and like the videos and all that stuff, you know that from YouTube, then I'm sure there will be quite a few videos about blowing technique and about how to produce an airstream and what to do with your lips exactly. Right. If you've seen my video on how to get a first tone on the shakuhachi, you know that one of my main educational props for this is to use something like this. Okay, and at this point, I often like to say that it only works with German beer because German beer rules. But it actually works with any bottle. So, and as you can see, this is actually alcohol free. So this is a family friendly show. So there is no alcohol consumption in this video. Okay. Right. The bottle is still full. So you now have the pleasure of seeing me drinking this bottle of beer. By the way, I'm still not sponsored. So if any brewery of any kind of beer that I like would like to sponsor my videos, I might agree. But this is no product placement, and I'm definitely not sponsored. Okay, bottle is empty. Now, what you do is you do the old party trick. You have all been to a party, you've all drank, if not beer, some other beverage. As I say, it works with lemonade as well. What you should do is that you just blow into the bottle. Something like that, okay? The point is that making a sound on the Shinobue is actually pretty similar to producing a sound on a beer bottle. And the main point that I would like you to keep in mind when you start taking up the Shinobue and trying to make a sound on this instrument is how relaxed you are when you produce a sound on the beer bottle, okay? If you really tense up your lips and try to make a sound here, this happens, okay? And this is exactly the same that happens on the Shinobue as well, or on most flutes that have the same basic construction. Okay, so you can maybe also see that my embouchure, the opening of my lips, is actually quite wide. Okay, so practice this, and if at any point you struggle make a sound on the Shinobue, get out a bottle, drink alcohol-free beer if you like, and practice on the bottle again to just loosen up a bit. So this, of course, is a bit jokey, okay, but the point really is that the basic approach to producing a sound on a beer bottle and on the Shinobue is not so different, okay? So this actually is a good preparatory exercise to do. Before I go back to the Shinobue, I'll actually drink some water because it's not good practice to blow into an instrument after you drank coffee or beer or, I don't know, something sweet. So let me just grab a bit of water. Now, making a sound on the Shinobue is just the same as we just did with a beer bottle. So remember your basic position, hold the flute between these two fingers and press it slightly, very gently against your lower lip. And try to do the same as you did on the beer bottle. Okay, try to keep your lips relaxed. If you've heard a Shinobue before, you'll notice that my tone is very loose at the moment, so I'm not really focusing very strongly. But for starting out, this is very helpful. Try to keep your lips relaxed, try to keep a big embouchure, keep your lips apart as much as you can. Because that way, you have the biggest chance of hitting the opposite side of this hole with your airstream to produce a sound. Okay, so this is where you're aiming at. And just as an additional side note, if you saw my introductory video of the shakuhachi and I told the same story about the beer bottle, the Shinobue actually is much easier because for the shakuhachi to produce a tone, it's the same basic story, but you have to cover some of the hole with your lower lip for the shakuhachi. Okay, so this just for the people who either saw the video or who play shakuhachi. For the Shinobue, this is actually different. Your lower lip is against the back part of the blowing hole, and you just aim at the opposite part. This also leads me to a very nice trick on how to find a good starting position for making a sound, which is that you just feel this hole here with both your lips. So lower lip here, upper lip here. So like this, just hold the hole against your mouth and then rotate the flute out. Okay, so that the hole is pretty much horizontal. This is pretty much the position that you want to be in. Here, the hole is pretty symmetrical against your upper lip and your lower lip, like so. Rotate it out. Okay. So, that's the basic trick for making a sound on the Shinobue. There's a lot more to sound production, as it is for all these bamboo instruments. They live and die with a good sound, and it takes a lot of practice and a lot of fine motor control to learn to be able to produce a good sound on these instruments. So this takes some time. This takes quite a long time, actually. But for the basic sound, this should get you started. Let's talk about some of the fingerings. I'll only talk about the first register, about the lowest octave that you can play on the Shinobue. So on Shinobue you have 3 octaves that you can play, well, almost 3 octaves that you can play. The lowest octave is the easiest to play, so we start out with that one. You can find fingering charts easily on the web. I'll post a link below as well. The fingerings on the Shinobue are actually really simple. Let's start with all holes open, which is where you have the pinky of your right hand down so that you can balance the flute between these 2 fingers. So you have all holes open. Then you close 1 hole, you close a 2nd hole, you close a 3rd hole. So just straightforward. Then you close the next hole, but when you close this hole, you actually lift the pinky. It doesn't make any difference in pitch. So let me just prove this. For this note, it doesn't make any difference in pitch, but it's still common to lift the pinky here. Okay, then put this finger down, put this finger down. And this actually is the lowest note on the instrument. This is not quite true, so I should have said this is the bass note of the instrument. So this is a number 6 flute, so the bass pitch is B flat, and B flat is the pitch that I produce when I close all the holes, except for this one here. Okay, so this is a B flat. The fingerings in the first octave is really straightforward. There are 2-3 things you need to know about fingerings in the 2nd and 3rd octave, but don't worry about that for now. So if I play the scale downwards that I just demonstrated with the fingers, other way around, bottom to top. Okay. I'm well aware this is not a complete scale. You always expect to hear the last note as well. But this already is the first note in the next octave, so we don't use this in this video. We'll get to that later. Those are the notes. Now you can start playing. At first, of course, you'll need to experiment a bit with tone production, so it will take a while until you can make a steady note, until you can make a steady sound. And the best practice for that is long note practice. This is the same for all wind instruments. If you're a shakuhachi player, you will know about rubuki. This is the basic exercise for shakuhachi. But long note practice is the basic practice for any wind instrument. To practice producing notes on the Shinobue, play long notes. And take the next note down. Take the next note down. And so on and so on and so on and so on. You can try many different variations of these. You can try to play as loud as you can. You can try to play as long as you can, which means you probably play very quiet. And so on and so on and so on. Then the next logical step is to play very slow scales. So again, play long notes, this is the best way to cover the basic technique, to get a grip on the basic technique. That, for example, or go up or go down and then up. All these things, all permutations. So long note practice or playing scales very slowly is the best way to improve on the Shinobue. You will also notice probably that you will get dizzy at some point, sooner or later, but it's very likely that you will experience some dizziness. This is very natural. If you get dizzy, just stop playing for a bit, recuperate, and then try again. The point is that, in particular for beginners, it's very typical to blow very hard, to use a lot of air. And I've already encouraged you not to do that, but it's the easiest way to get the sound out of the instrument, and also at the beginning, it's the easiest way to get quite a steady sound. Over time, you will develop more control and it will get better. But in particular at the beginning, you will use up a lot of air, and this will cause dizziness. This is just because you take in a lot of oxygen and you don't move around enough to really use up the oxygen. So this is how the dizziness comes about. Don't worry about this. This is very natural. And this also happens to experienced professionals. So it's nothing unusual that this happens. So don't worry about that. All right. So this is really all I wanted to say about basic technique. It's not that complicated really, as all these things. It takes a lot of practice, it takes a lot of repetition, and it just takes time. So it's nothing that you can solve by just practicing many hours a day. It just takes some time as well, meaning that it will take some weeks, months, years until you get proficient with the technique. And as with basically any instrument, you will never be really satisfied with your technique. You will always want to improve more on your technique. So this is something that accompanies you while you play an instrument, while you learn to play an instrument. But I'll stop this video here. I hope you found this useful. If you did, as always, please subscribe to my channel. YouTube really likes this. Please like the video. Please leave a comment, in particular if you have any difficulties maybe with what I'm saying here in this video on how to practice this. If you want to give me an idea for a future video, I'm always happy to answer questions and to pick up points that people make in the comments. So yeah, please leave me a comment. It would be really nice to hear from you. And if you find these videos useful, I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.